KSI is making his boxing return this year, but it seems like ever since he fought Logan Paul, his boxing career has not went to plan, and he didn't get the Jake Paul fight. A lot of people have stopped caring, and some things have went wrong. So today we're going to be going through how KSI ruined his boxing career. So KSI kind of started this whole YouTube boxing thing. He fought Joe Weller after Joe Weller made a video with Theo Baker having a boxing spar. He beat Joe Weller via TKO and then went on to call out the Paul brothers, Jake Paul, Logan Paul. At the time, everyone wanted to see the fall of the Pauls and them get humbled because they were obviously the most annoying YouTubers. So KSI was kind of the good guy in that scenario, which since then, which we'll get to later, he's kind of embraced more of the villain role.
Yeah, I would 100% say KSI was like the people's champ. Everyone was rooting for him, especially had that heavy influence in the UK scene and was even starting to bleed out more into the mainstream. And that's where we get into the Logan Paul fights, in which Logan Paul won being an amateur fight, everyone rooting for KSI, the underdog, the smaller guy. And KSI really gave Logan Paul the platform pretty much to revamp his name after the whole Forest incident. And in the end, that first fight ended up being a draw, which definitely shocked the internet, but pretty much led to even more hype for their rematch and to see KSI prevail and come through and beat Logan Paul, in which we saw in that second fight their first pro match, in which stuff really started to get real for YouTube boxing. And KSI, the biggest underdog, moving up in weight against Logan Paul, in which even Logan Paul had former heavyweight champion Shannon Briggs in his corner.
Let's go, champ!
That whole build-up was incredible, and we saw KSI conquer and beat Logan Paul, and the reception to that was just incredible.
Yeah, like you said, the people's champ at the time, and he kind of finished the storyline. The saga with Logan Paul was finally over. He came out victorious, but then we slowly started to see the progression of Jake Paul. As he launched into boxing, he beat KSI's brother Deji, then he fought a Nissan Gibb a couple months after the Logan Paul second fight, stopped him in the first round, and now KSI had to fight Jake Paul if he was ever going to come back. Now, he could have either left it at that and said, nah, I don't need to fight Jake, I already beat the big bro, I don't have anything left to prove, but instead, he took about 3 years off of boxing, finally returning in 2022 when he was set to fight Alex Wasabi. And this is kind of where we saw the problems arise for KSI, taking tune-up fights, trying to build back as he started Misfits boxing as well.
And a lot of people were really hyped for the return of KSI to, in the end, the end goal, beat Jake Paul once and for all and end the saga. So coming back, there was a lot of hype to start the Misfits boxing brand as well. Misfits boxing 1, in which he started kind of leaning in more to the villain role we saw. And I think from there, people kind of started to question a bit what was happening, but nonetheless, he gets the wins in a big viral moment against the two fighters on one night. And everyone was expecting Jake Paul to be next from there.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, the expectations Jake Paul set in terms of opponents was a problem for KSI if he wanted to live up to them, which he did say that was his inevitable goal. He wanted to fight Jake Paul. He wanted to get this over with. So when it came time for KSI to start upping the levels, we saw some questionable matchmaking. KSI getting booked to fight Dillon Danis, and again, his career kind of riddled with pullouts, as first he decided to fight Alex Wasabi, he pulled out, then he decided to fight Dillon Danis, he pulled out, then we were left with KSI versus FaZe Temper, which already had gotten knocked out a couple months prior to Slim, and while it was a great performance from KSI, knocking him out, finishing him in one round, he was just never able to even get that mainstream audience and that combat sports audience like Jake Paul was doing at the time, getting the MMA audience, like having that rivalry with Dana White, fighting Ben Askren, Tyron Woodley. KSI was in discussion to fight Woodley, then that fell through. So the opponents KSI was facing was a real problem for him, and he just wasn't able to live up to the expectations of Jake Paul was setting.
And the disappointment kind of continued, in which KSI's next fight would be against Joe Fournier, who they were kind of hyping up in a way to be this sort of pro boxer. But in reality, he was a 40-year-old businessman who had no right to really even be in the ring with KSI, as that was just a complete domination of a fight until the big moment in which Joe Fournier gets completely devastated by an elbow from KSI. And something that really rubbed fans the wrong way was when KSI was trying to play off that elbow as a legit win and that he didn't actually elbow him. And we started to see his community go off on him a little bit, and I think this was really the start of a turning point in which fans were not too happy with not just the opponents that KSI were fighting and especially in comparison to Jake Paul and his path, and as well in how he was reacting to some of the feedback and results that was happening.
And also leading up to that fight against Joe Fournier, there was this whole situation where KSI and Mams turned on one of their big commentators, the Wade Concept, and fired him from Misfits, and there's a lot of controversy there, and also with KSI getting canceled briefly for saying a slur. So there's just a lot of things adding up for KSI at the time that just weren't going in his favor. And then we saw KSI finally up the levels, but it was a big jump going from Joe Fournier to Tommy Fury. The matchmaking prior didn't really prepare KSI for that kind of level of opposition, but he was taking the risk anyway, and this is when he really started to lean in fully 100% into the cringe, embracing it, saying he could see John Cena in the lead up to that fight, putting out messages to Tommy Fury saying that day will haunt you for the rest of your life, and all the moments KSI was making. Obviously it is just fight promotion, but KSI quickly just became the villain in boxing, and especially after the fight, it was a close fight, but Tommy Fury ended up winning a unanimous decision, which KSI then appealed. KSI was talking about how he beat Tommy Fury and kind of coming off a little bit as a sore loser. Obviously, you want to win and you want to make a case for how you're the better man, and it's not the first time we've ever seen that in combat sports. Even Jake Paul was making excuses for why he lost to Tommy Fury, but now it was whether he was ever going to return again, because he said Tommy Fury was going to be his last fight. He was going to beat him. He was going to retire. He didn't have anything else to prove. He wanted to fight Tommy Fury so he could prove that he's better than Jake Paul, since Jake lost to him, but now they both have losses to Tommy, so the whole thing just kind of comes off badly for KSI.
And also after the Tommy fight, he was also involved in some controversies outside of the ring as well, involved in some of his music as well, like The Thick of It, people making fun of that song and his response to it not being how some fans would expect it. Maybe there's also some people thinking that maybe he was just playing into it so the song would be bigger, which is also a possibility, but to the average person looking in, it just looked like he was responding badly to that song reaction. As well, there's the whole Dan TDM beef with Lunchley coming out, and his fan base was definitely starting to turn on him a little bit because it was just controversy after controversy for him, and this is all leading on to his return to the ring, in which now all the accumulation of this has kind of led to the fans now fully being on his side. And then you get the announcement originally that KSI is going to be fighting retired soccer player Wayne Bridge, so it's definitely just not coming off the right way. Just continuous disappointment for fans. And then the Wayne Bridge fight got canceled, and now we're finally left with Dillon Danis.
Yeah, so now we're getting KSI versus Dillon Danis in March, which not one that many fans were expecting, because KSI did just fight Tommy Fury. I know it was a year and a half ago, and he's had 18 months off since then by the time this fight happens, but KSI's boxing career has kind of been riddled with not the best matchmaking, not the best progression. He even said that after the Dillon Danis fight, he wants to fight Jake Paul, and he's open and ready for that. So I mean, going from Dillon Danis to fighting Jake Paul is not a good progression, and the fact that this Jake Paul fight hasn't happened has not helped his case either. Hopefully we see KSI versus Jake Paul now, and maybe we'll see KSI get back into the mix, and maybe the people will get on his side once again. Who knows what the future holds, but for now, this is what went wrong with KSI's boxing career. Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below on this entire situation, and if you enjoyed the video, be sure to leave a like, subscribe, and check out the video on screen for more Punch Talk.